As you get into the hobby, you are bound to collect books, literature, tools, and other trinkets. And not all of them are going to give you value you originally thought they would. That means there are some products that I think you may regret. So, today I will be discussing 2 products that I bought that felt like a waste of money, and what to do before and after buying said materials. And I'm not going to waste your time since you probably want to know what these items are. The first is a D100 metal plating sided dice, and the other is a melee mat battle mat that's used for board games. Both these items I bought back around June of 2023. I'll be honest, I've only used these items about 4 times. And it's a shame because I run in-person games, but hindsight is 2020, and I should have thought about my needs and wants before making these purchases. So, here are the reasons why I don't need these products or why they aren't getting used often. First, I run more online games than in person, so I have far less reason to run them. And while yes, I did mention earlier that I run more in-person games now, the vast majority of my games are largely online. 2. The games I play are not always tactically focused. For example, in Call of Cthulhu, I'm not exactly measuring 30 feet or 40 feet, so the melee mat's not going to get used much. 3rd, there are other tools that were less cumbersome to travel with, especially the battle mats. When you're carrying books, notes, and other materials, it's a lot to ask when you're carrying also battle mats and extra heavier dice. 4. The need of players and I didn't connect to the materials I bought. The games we played and the things we interacted with didn't need the battle mats and didn't need the D100. And number 5. There's not a reason in my game to use the battle mats in a D100. While, yes, I did run Call of Cthulhu, there were plenty of alternative dice that I could have used instead of that blocky, cumbersome D100. So, all this is to say that you too should really consider what you're buying when you go to your local game store or online. So, this means, unless you have the discretionary money, time, and space, it usually is best to consider what will add the most value to your game. I regret buying my items because they honestly never get used and feel like they take up space. Be purposeful with the GM tools and player tools you'll need. Consider what are your constraints and priorities as a GM or a player. Different GM and players will need different things. As such, I created a little questionnaire for myself when thinking about my next purchase or next item. These questions do not need full answers, just 1 or 2 sentences. Don't think of this as an essay, rather as sort of a brain teaser for you to get started thinking about buying your next tools, trinkets, and items. First, what is the product? What do you need it for? And what games will you be using it for? 2. What is your current living situation? What is your financial situation? And where will you store these items? 3. Can you run/play the current game as is and still have the fun you like? 4. Miscellaneous topics, miscellaneous questions. This is where you include anything that wasn't already mentioned before. Each of these questions bring up different points, such as space, finances, your personal needs, and the system you're playing. So, let's put all of these together in a quick example with our friendly GM, Quinn. What is the product Quinn is buying? It is a dice tray, and specifically this hexagon dice tray. What do they need it for? This tray is for their in-person games and for the conventions. They run a game once a month in person too. What games will they be using it for? Call of Cthulhu and Vaesen. 2. What is their housing situation and financial situation? Quinn lives with their family in a pretty small house. They are about 20 minutes out via public transport from the city as well. Where will they store these items also? They already have a huge collection of RPGs, trinkets, and other tools from books and whatnot. So space is super tight in their own personal room. But fortunately, they do have some room underneath the bed at the moment. 3. Can they run the current game as is? Yes. They have been running Call of Cthulhu in person for quite some time, and they also have been running Vaesen pretty consistently as well. Though it is cumbersome to have dice roll off the table at games, especially conventions, it's not something that exactly is going to break your immersion. 4. Any other factors? Quinn works part-time at a nearby restaurant, so they don't have a lot of discretionary income since, well, a lot of their money is going to other things in their life. Thus, in this example, Quinn needs to decide what to do. Honestly, this just sounds like a budget sheet or a cost-benefit analysis. And yes, but it's still important to do when you're playing and running RPGs. Why? Because this is a hobby, and unfortunately, even though I hate capitalism as much as the next guy, you need money to buy the things you care about. Plus, it helps you support some indie RPGs, especially if you're running those. Anyhow, Quinn needs to think what they need to do. They don't have a lot of space, and they don't have a lot of money, but they do want a hexagon dice tray, simply to avoid dice falling off. Ultimately, the decision is Quinn's to make, and there are benefits to getting it and benefits not to getting it. At that point, the best discretion is to either wait it out and see if the feeling of buying it remains or just breaking down and getting it. This is not a hard science, I think, but it's worth thinking on so you, and I'm sure Quinn and any other people who are watching this, don't waste unnecessary money and time stressing out over their next product. Honestly, what you want at your table will depend on so many factors that I can't predict for you. Your price point, where you play your games, how many times a week, month, or year you play, how invested in the hobby you are, your current space/living situation, accessibility, your personal tastes in the game, the people you play with, what you can access in your country. These are all points that you should consider, or else you'll end up having a mat and dice that are just not the best for you, in my case. But that doesn't mean you can't still have fun. Hey, this RPG originates from a couple group of white nerds who, quite frankly, didn't have a lot of tools at their disposal. All they had was a couple pieces of paper, pencils, and their imagination. And hey, as much as RPGs are about having fun, they can also be a learning experience. And what is not more of a learning experience than making bad decisions? And sometimes a way to rectify that bad decision making is to have the right guide for the job. And well, I have an amazing video talking about this old D&D DM's guide that will prove extraordinarily helpful in the future. And special shout out to my Patreon supporters Harrison Parker and Jakibi for your continued contributions. And as always, I'm your average everyday queer host, Blurry Disposition, and I hope you all have an awesome day. Ciao.